Get ready for all the craziness of small business. It's exactly that craziness that makes it exciting and totally unbelievable. Small Business Radio is now on the air with your host, Barry Moltz.
Well, thanks for joining this week's radio show. Remember, this is the final word in small business. For those keeping track, this is now incredibly show number 574. This episode is provided by Nextiva, the all-in-one communications platform for your small business. It's also sponsored by LinkedIn, the place to generate leads, drive traffic, and build your brand awareness. For a free $100 credit to launch your campaign, go to www.linkedin.com/SBR. It's also supported by Visita, all you need to run your business in one software. Try for free at www.visita.com. That's VCITA.com, and use Barry10 for an exclusive discount. It's also sponsored by Blue Summit Supplies. Get your W-2s, your 1099 tax forms, and all your business supplies at www.bluesummitsupplies.com/SBR. Use special code SBR10 at checkout to save 10% on your entire order. Well, let's face it, prospects and clients want proof before they do business with you. One of the best ways to do this is to publish an effective case study that effectively can drive sales. Here to help is Brian McCarthy, who's a direct response copywriter for 5 years. He specializes in case studies that sell information products, membership sites, and coaching services online. His past clients have included industry leaders like T. Harv Eker and Ramit Sethi. He's also written for 7-figure product launches online and helped build marketing funnels that bring in new customers every day to your business. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Well, define us first. What is a case study?
So the case study is basically the customer's journey from where they were before they even found you and the problem they were having to, how they found you, what it's like to use the product, and then the success they had. So, a lot of people will have like the before and after testimonial of like, oh, I was overweight and now I lost 30 pounds, yay. But the case study is really showing that full journey of what it was like, both what it looked like and the emotions of what it felt like every step of the way.
So why aren't testimonials enough? We see all sorts of online reviews now that really influence people buying for your company. Why can't people do that? Why do they have to do case studies?
Well, testimonials are awesome, but what testimonials are, it's like just the social proof. So people definitely want to see them and they see, oh, look at all these people you've helped. Great. But the big question people have is, can this work for me? They've got their specific problem, their specific objection, and desires, and they're not really, they want to be sure that like this can work for somebody in my exact situation. It's kind of like if you look online for a movie review, it's like, okay, people like it, but do these people even have my same taste in music in movies? Do they like what I like?
So it's kind of the difference between. It's kind of the difference between looking on Rotten Tomatoes and see if it's rotten or fresh or thumbs up or thumbs down versus reading a detailed review of exactly how the movie works.
Yeah, a detailed review and knowing that review is coming from somebody who has your same taste. So that's really what a case study does. It lets you be like, oh, this person is exactly like me, and they were able to get the same thing that I wanted from this product or service.
So if you're going to have an effective case study, a detailed testimonial sense of how this worked for this customer, what are some things you're going to have to cover in order for it to generate sales?
Yeah, so you definitely want to cover the pain that the customer was in, and not just, oh, I was struggling for whatever, but actually like getting into detail and sharing what that looked like and felt like, because that's going to help suck the reader into it and help them feel that pain in their own life once you start like describing what that scene is like, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that's exactly the same problem I'm having. So the pain for sure, and then the other products or services that they tried that didn't work for them, that's a great way to start separating yourself from everybody else. And then you want to get into like what it was actually like to use your product and service, some of the lessons you might have learned or the struggles you might have had and how you overcame them, and then finally the end result of what you got, and then how that has changed your life. And again, going into specific moments there is absolutely huge, where it's not just like okay, and then I lost like 50 pounds. Like, okay, cool. Like, what did that look like? What did that feel like? And how has that changed your life? We can talk about how you're able to, run around with your grandkids like you weren't able to before. Stuff like that is really what matters more than, just the results. It's what those results get you. And going into detail there can really make your product or service more appealing.
I think, of course, you got to talk about the pain, but I think what you mentioned here, which is also really important, what did you try that didn't work? Because chances are I probably tried those same things that didn't work, and then it gets me more in your shoes.
Totally. And that goes again to like why case studies versus testimonials. Like testimonials, people can say, oh, I've tried everything. And case studies give you more time and chance to really go into like, this person tried these 4 things. They didn't work for this reason, and that made them feel this way. And going into that detail is going to connect a lot more with the reader because they're like, yeah, I've tried all those things, and that's how I feel too.
You also mentioned that you have to have specific end results. Do these things have to be quantifiable?
I like to include quantifiable results whenever possible, but also the intangible results. So, like, sometimes it's hard to quantify it if it's, say, like a personal development product and you're like, oh, it helped you get more confidence. You can't really necessarily quantify that, but you can tell a story of, how life was like before and how it is now of like, oh, and, now when I'm in my board meetings, I just feel a lot more better. And, my boss told me a good job at the last presentation, and he never said stuff like that before. So, like, yeah, when you can get specific data, I definitely include that. If it's like, oh, yeah, my business grew by 6 figures a year or whatever, but also the intangible results of, what does that 6 figures mean for you is also definitely something you want to include.
So, Brian, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to use case studies to generate sales?
Some of the mistakes are, one is just not making the case study valuable in itself. Like they'll just be quotes, and that's all well and good, but a great way to actually make the case study valuable is to teach through it. Like you can teach some of insightful lessons or, like what certain things that that the customer learned that helped them, because that makes the case study valuable in itself. So they're not just reading a sales pitch, they're actually reading something useful. And that's A, going to get them to like you more because you're helping them. And B, that's going to help get your case study shared among other people. So that would be the first one. And then also just sharing, specific moments of the story. We kind of talked about that before, but you're not just saying, oh, this person struggled with their weight. You're really going into the detail of what that looked and felt like, because that's going to suck the reader in and get them to feel that pain themselves and then want to solve it.
I think that people have to think about, if they've ever read a Harvard Business School case study, it's kind of like that, but light, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I've read a Harvard Business School case study, but yeah, I definitely keep them fun, conversational, using quotes that really make the story pop. I know when I do them, I also mix in a lot of videos and pictures and stuff. It's really about making it easy and digestible. It's definitely not a, stuffy case study you might see from like academic journals or something.
So I've written a case study. How do I best use it to build my funnel and to get sales?
Yeah, so a couple of awesome ways to use it. Facebook ads are always really good, and my customers have had a lot of success doing Facebook retargeting ads. You can also just have a success stories page on your website. If you really want to be fancy and specific, there are companies that do little like quizzes when you first get to their website, and then that will help you find like the end result of that quiz is a case study of, oh, here's somebody just like you. And so you can get to the case study and see that how this is for you. Another option is to kind of combine them, create a book. You can just send them to your email list during launches is really good. You can use them as upsells. That can be very effective of like, oh, here's how you got this product, but here's how people who bought this product and this other one had success. And yeah, so making them also for lead magnets for a book, like I already said. But those are some of the most effective ways to use them.
Yeah, you have to realize that any content you use, you can repurpose it, but really starts with getting permission from the past customer or client to do it. A lot of people don't even try because they don't think that the customers will give them permission. How do you get the right to use what happened to a customer?
If your customers are happy, they are so happy to tell you stories. They love it. I've never had a problem. I've pretty much never had a problem getting a customer to tell their story. And once you get them on the phone, they're happy to share their story. Nobody's asking them about this stuff. They want to talk about it. So really, that fear people have is just not really that valid. People that have had a lot of success, they want to talk about you.
Well, some people think that whatever they've achieved is now a competitive advantage and they don't want to share it with other folks.
Oh, that could be true too. I'm trying to think if there's been any examples that I've had of that.
I have a client in the pharmaceutical industry, and sometimes they feel, this is an advantage.
Oh, yeah, it's an advantage, and they don't want other people to see that, they're getting help from you, because then other people will get help from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, you're kind of part of their secret sauce.
Yeah.
But I think you got to ask.
Actually,
it starts with asking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's okay, is that going to be a real fear, hesitation they have, or is that something that is kind of in your mind? Because I've done case studies for a business coach, and pretty much everyone referred to him as he's their secret sauce. He's their, little known secret guru that helps them that nobody knows about. But they wanted people to know about him. They're this guy's awesome. They wanted him to be more well known and more successful, and they didn't really see themselves as losing the competition because they know that there was so much possibility and opportunity out there for them. So it could depend on the person, and yeah, there could be people like that, but it also just could be, a thing that you think might be a problem that actually isn't.
So I've got all these things to do as a small business owner, and now Barry's saying to me, well, I got to write case studies. Who can do this for you?
Who can do case studies for you? Yeah, that's why I wrote a book that's Case Studies Let's Close Sales. It's on my website, marketingwithbrian.com. So you can either, you can get that book and either write them themselves or give it to whatever copywriter you use. If I'm too fully booked to do it, you can just give it to a copywriter that can follow that book and come up with some pretty good case studies.
And how long should these case studies be, Brian?
So when I do them in the Google Docs, they're about 8 pages long, and then we also include video clips. So however long that makes it, I think it's about 2,000 words, and then I'll also include about 5 video clips throughout that are the customer telling the story in more detail.
And I think you bring up an excellent point. Case studies aren't just written now, right? Case studies are more extended videos.
Yeah, you can do both. I've found a lot of success having both video and text because, sometimes people are reading their stuff, they're on the phone in the bathroom or whatever, they can't watch the video, or some people are just doing the dishes and they want to listen to something. They don't want to sit there and read. So I like having both text and video so people can consume it however they want. And
we also have to understand people learn in a lot of different ways, right? Some people like to listen to radio shows or podcasts. Some people like to read. Some people like to watch videos. And you really need to transform this content into all the different forms that people like to learn.
Exactly. Yeah.
So just finally, are there any mistakes that we have not covered? Is the biggest mistake people don't go into enough detail, and that's what people really want?
Yeah, that's a huge one. Another one we could cover is that people, a lot of times in case studies, they just make it sound and then they joined our program and everything was great. And people can smell that that's BS and don't really buy it. So if you actually include some of the struggles that they had in using your product or service and how they got over them, or some of the self-doubt that they had, and maybe even, say you're saying a weight loss product, you talk about how they failed in the first couple weeks of using it, that can take a lot of pressure off of the reader because they feel like they have to get it perfect. And then they see, oh, this person actually failed at first, so it's okay if I don't get it perfect. I've heard that kind of response a bunch to the case studies where they're like, people were happy to see that it wasn't just all sunshine and rainbows. A, it makes them trust you more, and B, they see that it's more real, and they don't feel all that pressure to be perfect.
I thought it was puppies and rainbows. That too. Yeah, I mean, whenever you see someone that says, hey, I was productive on the first day, it just worked right out of the box. It's like, well, not really. So any of the struggles, I think, really helps. Well, Brian, I appreciate you being on the show. Where can people get more information about how they can use case studies to fill their prospect pipeline?
My book or marketing, or my website, marketingwithbrian.com, has my book, Case Studies Like Close Sales. It shows you my entire process for creating case studies, a bunch of different ways to use them. It's really like everything I've learned from the past couple of years of doing this is in that book, and so you can just take it and go. Again, let me give you your website. It's www.marketingwithbrian.com. Brian, thanks so much. Cool. Thank you very much, and congrats on 574. That's quite impressive. It's a lot of shows to listen to. This is AM 820 WCPT in Chicago. We'll be right back. Time and place is everything, especially when it comes to marketing. But in today's age of 1 million messages per minute and not enough hours in a day, how do you really catch people's attention? Fortunately, there's a simple way. LinkedIn can help you speak to the right professionals at the right time. With over 62 million decision makers on LinkedIn, you're able to connect with the right business leaders who are relevant to your company. And with LinkedIn ads, you can make sure your messages are getting through to these relevant people. Even small businesses are making the most of LinkedIn ads. They're using LinkedIn to get their voices heard and their messages to resonate with the audience. It's not just about awareness either. LinkedIn ads are driving traffic and engagement, whether that's visits to a landing page, registrations to an event, or downloads of that thought leadership piece. Because with precise targeting, small businesses can speak to the people that matter the most. At the end of the day, LinkedIn ads are helping smaller businesses get big results. Try it for yourself. LinkedIn is offering a free $100 LinkedIn ad credit to launch your first campaign. Simply go to www.linkedin.com/SBR. That's www.linkedin.com/SBR to claim your free $100 ad credit. Terms and conditions apply.
You've already upgraded your cell phone to a smart device, which lets you use the internet to be more productive on the go. But what about your desk phone? Nextiva is a smart business phone system in the cloud. With a simple setup through an internet connection, you can soon have access to your office communications wherever you are. Stay seamlessly connected with clients and stay more mobile than ever before with just one low monthly cost. Give your business more than just a basic desk phone. Visit Nextiva.com or call 800-799-0600 to learn more today. Nextiva. Simplifying your business communications.
Tune in regularly to my show, then you know that I talk to many different businesses across the country, different types of people, different backgrounds, all kinds of industries. But there's one thing that unites all of us: searching that thing known as work-life balance. I get pretty bummed out when a listener tells me that they haven't been home for dinner in a whole month. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to vCita. vCita does a lot for one little application. It can help you achieve that lifestyle. vCita is that personal assistant on steroids you never had. It syncs your client information, appointments, and payments. vCita sends automated appointments and payment reminders, making sure your clients keep appointments and get paid on time. vCita understands today's consumer, making it easy for them to book an appointment and pay from literally anywhere. A website, Facebook, emails, even your Google My Business profile. It's also compatible with Google, Gmail, iCal, social media, and Square Payments. So get your free 14-day trial during which you can explore every single feature. Go to vCita.com. That's VCITA.com. No credit card required, no strings attached, no brainer. And when you're ready to buy, use promo code BARRY10 to get 10% off.
Thinking of starting your own business? Get on board for a crazy ride. Be the first to tweet Barry at Barry Moltz and get a free copy of his book, You Need to Be a Little Crazy, The Truth About Starting and Growing Your Own Business.
Stick around to get your small business unstuck. More of Small Business Radio with Barry Moltz, now on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Well, part of being a small business owner is to know how to have the difficult conversations with team members, customers, and vendors. But many of us avoid this until actually not having the conversation is causing additional damage. My next guest can help with this. Scott Miller serves as the Executive Vice President of Thought Leadership. He's the host of Franklin Covey's sponsored On Leadership with Scott Miller, a weekly leadership webcast, podcast, and newsletter that features interviews with renowned business titans, authors, and thought leaders, and distributed more than 5 million business leaders worldwide. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Barry, thanks for the platform today.
Oh, appreciate you being on here. So why do we avoid having tough conversations?
Well, I think it's difficult, right? I mean, I think it is high stakes, and it can go south without practice or training. Most people are not naturally courageous when it comes to talking about the undiscussables. You have to practice it, role play it, fail a few times, fail a few dozen times, before you kind of build that muscle and start to get it right.
And regardless of what we think, I think that most folks really don't like conflict, or they don't seek out conflict, except perhaps the talking heads on TV.
That's exactly right. I mean, you're absolutely right. Most leaders need to recognize that, honestly, their biggest contribution, the gift that they give people who work for them, is having these conversations where you help to uncover people's blind spots. Everybody's got them. You and me, we've got them. But if you want to actually develop someone's skills, whether it be their communication skills, their collaboration skills, their ability to take responsibility for their actions, any number of things, as a leader, you have to have these conversations or you don't deserve the job.
And difficult conversations, Scott, don't necessarily mean conflict, right?
Well, definitely not. In fact, can I give you a few tips on how to build that skill?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. First, as a leader, you have to say to yourself, this is part of my job and I have to do it. Don't dread it. Instead, look at it as an opportunity to give your people that you're going to grow them. Second, when you're thinking of a topic where this employee who reports to you needs some high courage feedback that's outside of your own comfort zone or even skill set, make sure you separate your opinions and your emotions from the facts. Take a T-chart and write down, well, I think this and I feel that, versus last week she said this in a meeting and that was not acceptable. Separate those two things. Next, role play it. Sit down with someone in HR or in the senior leadership team. You don't have to disclose their name. Don't air their dirty laundry, but role play it 3 or 4 or 5 times. That way you can see, what is your body language like? Are you using the right words? How are you coming across to the other person? And then lastly, when you sit the person down, just talk straight. Close the door and say, hey, John, I've invited you in here today to have, a high courage conversation. And what's said in here will stay in here. And my intent is to give you some feedback on some areas that you're struggling with that you may not be aware of. And I might not use the right words. I might not say it right. I might ask for a do-over. So forgive me on that. And then launch into it. That's just a good conversation that most people can handle.
I love that, Scott, because I think one of the most difficult conversations that I used to have when I was running my own businesses was you'd see these really high-performing people that brought in great results to the organization, but then when it came to culture, they were a nightmare, right? And so they were really hurting what was going on, and so you kind of avoided this conversation because you wanted their results, but you knew that you had to do something long-term because they were damaging the culture in your company.
That's right. And your other high performers will see you as a weak leader who avoids conflict and abandons the culture, and then they'll quit. You'll be stuck with the high performer who's still wrecking culture. In fact, that's not unique to you, right? I mean, every termination I've ever had to lead, it wasn't because the person lacked the technical competency to do the job. They lacked the interpersonal skills. A lot of people call them soft skills. They're not soft skills. They're people skills. And every one of us could use a little coaching on some of them. It doesn't mean that one person is a wreck. They just don't see themselves like other people do, and they need a coach to step to the plate and talk to them about it.
One of the things that you were discussing when you were saying having this conversation was you made yourself vulnerable. And I think a lot of managers or leaders don't want to do that because they think it takes away some of their power. But one of the things you said in this scenario was, I may get it wrong. People think that, well, maybe that's not a good thing to say because then they won't listen to me.
Oh, gosh, I think the opposite. I mean, I think you hit it. Vulnerability is a key leadership competency. We've got to stop this metaphorical separation between leaders and employees, right? I mean, leaders, wake up. You're not the smartest person in the room. You don't have to have all the answers. Your job is not to be the genius in the room. To quote my good friend Liz Wiseman, who wrote the book Multipliers, your job is to be the genius maker of others. So just admit your own vulnerabilities. Maybe start the conversation out with, you know what, a little bit like me, I'm seeing in you a challenge with this. Or previously in my career, I struggled with something and I'm seeing similar to you and I want to help you out. I don't think you should separate yourself. Your job as a leader is to provide coaching and to give people insight into how they can improve. That's the biggest gift you'll ever give them. And you can be a transition figure because the odds are the leader before you was a pansy. And he or she didn't step to the plate, have these conversations. The person just keeps repeating the same behaviors over and over again. You can be a major transition figure in somebody's career and in their personal life if you have the courage and the diplomacy. You got to balance consideration with courage in these conversations. You can have a major impact on their life.
So, Scott, a lot of questions I get by small business owners, how vulnerable should I be? Because I think vulnerability is strength, but if you get up in front of your team and say, I have no idea what the freak I'm doing, right? Maybe that's not the best way to go.
Yeah, although, you know what? I tell you, you didn't get there by being incompetent. I mean, I've written a whole book, Management Mess to Leadership Success, where I confessed 30 really legitimate leadership challenges I've had. And I'm an officer in a public leadership company. I think it's okay to say that. I think the more vulnerable you are, the more some people are going to use it against you, right? There's always those people who are going to use that and weaponize it back against you. You know what? They're never going to take you down in the long run. I think people like to relate to their leader. I don't think you say, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you could say, you know what, on this particular project, I'm really open to everybody's feedback. It's not my expertise. Ultimately, I'm responsible for making the decision, and I'll make sure that I'm with you all the way. Who's got some great ideas on this? I think that is such powerful leadership. Your job is not to be the smartest person in the room. Your job is to build a culture where you attract and retain smart people in the room.
I was sitting in a meeting with a very successful company, about $50 million in sales, and they just had gone through a horrible rollout of their newest product. It basically failed. The CEO gets up there and says, if I didn't own the company, I would have fired myself. I did such a bad job in this. And I think that a lot of people appreciate that because he was being so honest that, you know something, even I could have done better. It's my responsibility.
I want to work for that person because that person, I'll bet you, is very mature, or they're self-aware enough to realize they need to be more mature, more competent, more disciplined, more discerning. That is a great leader.
And you also interesting though, this is his second company, and his last company he sold for $1 billion. So he's very successful. Yeah. He knows how to do it.
Right. That doesn't mean as a leader, Barry, you walk around confessing all your sins and being self-deprecated. Of course not. People want to see confidence in a leader. They want to see competence. They want the person to be trustworthy. They want, all those things that you want in a leader. At the same time, they do want someone who's vulnerable, who admits that they're also on the path that you're on as well. They might be a day or two or a month or year ahead of you.
We're talking with Scott Miller, who's the Executive Vice President of Thought Leadership at Franklin Covey. Scott, one of the things you also mentioned was that you should go out there and role play, and I have found that really important. How do you do it if you're in a small company and you don't necessarily have an HR person?
Yeah, I mean, go over to a friend, right? Go to a colleague. You've got friends in other companies. I mean, you probably have a network or an association. Pick up get your brother-in-law. Anybody can sit down in a conference room with you and critique your body language, right? Critique, are you showing empathy? Do I really generally feel like you care about me even though you're delivering, really tough feedback that might even result in my termination. It doesn't take, an HR expert to tell you how they feel. And the more you do it, the more you'll become comfortable delivering it, and you'll be aware of some of your own blind spots. I mean, one of mine is I have no lack of courage. I'll discuss anything with anyone. That's great. But it's also not great because then I can take it too far. And I'm a little bit, I'm not robotic, I don't think, but I'm a little bit too willing to cross some boundaries sometimes. So I need to show more consideration, recognize I've been thinking about this for the last 3 weeks. They're hearing it for the first time, perhaps in their life right now. I need to balance consideration with courage. An excess of one, you have too much courage, you'll verbally eviscerate somebody, and you rob them of their self-esteem. Too much consideration, and you might be too shy or too demure or beat around the bush, and the person doesn't get the point. Just remember, an equal balance of courage and consideration when giving high courage feedback.
And it's a great point. One of the questions I've always wanted to ask an executive of Franklin Covey is, why do people follow other people? What is that one or two things that really makes a leader and want people to join your mission?
Yeah, I think two things. I think a combination of confidence and vulnerability. That's what I look for in a leader. But at the end of the day, you want to trust someone. You want to know that they're telling the truth, that they're being transparent, that, they don't have hidden agendas, which of course we all do, but they're transparent about their hidden agendas, that, you don't become trustworthy. Somebody else decides you are trustworthy, right? I often will give a speech and say, raise your hand if you're trustworthy. Everybody's hands goes up. And I say, no, who decides if you're trustworthy? It's the other person. So it's people that behave themselves into a reputation of being trustworthy are the types of people that others want to follow.
And this does take time. It's just like with customers, you don't earn that trust over immediately. It takes time.
No. And it can be destroyed in, one slip up, right? I mean, a lot of people are forgiving, but, it does take time. But, your reputation is simply the collection of all the decisions you make. I think leaders don't maybe take that as seriously as I'm saying it. Be thoughtful. Be deliberate. Don't say things that you're going to regret an hour or a day later, right? Maybe say, if someone says something to you that's inflammatory or annoying or insulting, don't lash out at them. Maybe say something like, that's interesting. I'm glad you shared that. If you don't mind, I'm going to take a day to think about my response because I want what I say to also be what I feel, not just today, but for the next week. And it's things like that, exercising, a little bit of discipline, putting some space between the stimulus and your response. You'll do a lot less apologizing.
Scott, the last question I wanted to ask you was about turnover. We're in a full employment economy. There's a lot of turnover. And when someone leaves, or at least for me, when I ran my own businesses back in the 90s and early 2000s, I would take it really personally. How should I react when someone who I really like, that really contributed to my organization, leaves?
Barry, it's an exceptionally wise question. Send-offs are more about the people who stay than they are about the person who's leaving. When someone comes to you and announces that they want to leave, you know what? We can all feel like it's a personal betrayal. They were out meeting or interviewing behind our back. I get that. That's normal. But don't fall victim to that. Celebrate their departure. Not artificially, but say, you know what? I'm excited for you. I hope you go out. I hope you learn a ton at that competitor. And you know what? I hope you bring it back here into this organization 2 or 3 years from now. And in the meantime, send all of your friends that are high trustworthy and high competence into our organization. If you celebrate their departure, everybody is watching you. Because typically, most organizations, when someone quits, we cut them out emotionally, and then we blame them for all the problems. It's a horrible leadership tendency that all of us can fall into. Remember, send-offs are more about those who stay than the person who's leaving. Everybody's watching how you handle it.
It's interesting, Scott, because we focus so much on orientation or someone's first 30 days, we never focus on their exits.
Yeah, and our egos get bruised. I don't take it personally, especially if we had some kind of friendship. I mean, we go through the whole timeline of how often were they interviewing, and they weren't actually sick that day. Release yourself of that. Right? Everyone's just trying to provide for their family, build their career. People aren't sociopaths by nature, right? Good people quit jobs and move on, especially now in the new generation. I mean, gone are the days where I'm 51, where my father and I stayed at companies for 20, 30 years. I mean, that's now kind of not the norm. That's kind of odd. I've been at Franklin Covey for 23 years. People ask kind of, what's wrong with you? Nobody wanted you? Now the average tenure is 2-3 years.
Right.
That's the norm.
Right.
Just embrace it and try to keep them and get as much out of them in the short time you have them, and invite them to come back when they decide they're ready to have another great career back in this organization. That currency will speak so loudly to everyone. That's a culture builder versus a culture destroyer.
Well, Scott, I appreciate you being on the show. Where can people get in touch with you at Franklin Covey?
Yeah, so the book I wrote is Management Mess to Leadership Success. You can visit managementmess.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, Scott Miller at Franklin Covey. And you can always visit franklincovey.com to connect with me as well.
Thanks so much, Scott. This is AM 820 WCPT in Chicago. We'll be right back. Tax season is here, and now it's time to file. Blue Summit Supplies has what you need to make filing your 1099s and W-2s quicker, cheaper, and easier than ever. Reduce the stress of tax season by stocking up on IRS-compliant tax forms for your 1099s, W-2s, plus learn how you can save time and money by filing your 2019 taxes online using their simple, safe, and secure electronic filing service. Enjoy free expedited shipping on every order within the continental U.S. Learn more at www.bluesummitsupplies.com/SBR and use the code SBR10 at checkout to save 10% on your order for any paper tax forms and envelopes.
Are you stuck? Is this the year you finally grow your business and make more money? During Barry's many years of running his own company, he had to deal with the challenges of a business that just wasn't going anywhere. It was a painful realization. His business had flatlined, and he had no idea how to breathe more life into it. It was especially difficult for Barry, since his customers were not getting the service he was so passionate about delivering. Second, he wasn't making any money. Finally, his business was sucking the life out of him. Do any of these sound familiar? Your sales won't budge in spite of your best efforts. You have few new leads for customers coming in, and existing customers are fading away. You're burned out and completely exhausted. It's no longer fun, and your family suffers as well. If you're one of the millions of small business owners facing these problems every year, Barry has the answer. Check out barrymoltz.com/unstuck to subscribe to his 6-part video series. That's Barry Moltz, MOLTZ.com/unstuck.
Stick around to get your small business unstuck. More of Small Business Radio with Barry Moltz, now on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Well, here's a fact that all of us have to face today, that staff working remotely is a key part of every small business. It's also one of the big challenges. How do you do work and motivate a team if you never physically see them? How do you measure their performance? Here to help is Teresa Douglas, who has worked remotely since 2010 in a variety of management level roles. She holds an MFA in fiction from Sarah Lawrence College, an MBA from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She's a co-author of a book called Working Remotely, Secrets to Success for Employees on Distributed Teams. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So why is this such a big issue for small business owners?
Well, let's talk about it first from a cost perspective. You can save a significant amount of money if you don't have to buy office space or lease office space. And that can be money you can put somewhere else, into marketing. You can put it into putting your product out there and making a bigger impact. So it's an amazing cost savings. It's also a way to get the best employees regardless of where they live. So you can really help your business if you're not limited by geography.
But it also brings up a lot of problems because a lot of managers used to evaluating someone only by to see if their butt is in that seat, right? So it's a different way of staying in touch and collaborating together, isn't it?
It is, but let's also be serious about some of that. Like you said, butt in seat doesn't mean productive. Someone could be on social media, you're looking at them on their computer.
That's right.
But when you're in a remote office, you can't be, I would say, that sloppy, because you have to look at outcomes. Is this person turning their things in on time? Are the things they turning in, are they quality? Are we managing people's outcomes? Because that really, at the end of the day, for a business, it's the outcome. It's the money we're bringing in. And remote work can really help you focus in on that.
And I think that is really what's going to be the savior for a lot of small businesses. If we stop focusing on butts and seats, let me see if so-and-so busy, did they come in early, did they leave late? But they focus on what did they actually get done that contributed to moving this company forward.
Exactly.
And I love you talk about in the book is you call it distributed teams, right? Why do you use the word distributed teams?
Because there's so many things that are covered when you look at remote work. So you can have someone who's never in an office. You can have someone who's in an office a couple times a week. You can have another office that you have in a different location where someone's working in an office over there and you're working in your office over here. So remote work means a lot of different things. Distributed covers that a little bit better. Just this idea that we're not all sitting together in the same room doing the same work.
Because in a sense, really in every office environment, the teams are distributed, even if you're in the same building.
Yeah, because are you going to walk up 6 flights of stairs to go ask John if he has that report? You're not. You're going to send an email.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you know if everybody is meant to work remotely? I think that you have to have a certain amount of discipline if you're going to work apart physically, not in an office. How do you figure out if this person's a good fit for that if you're going to hire them?
There are a couple things. One, why do they want to work remotely? If someone has a specific reason, it doesn't have to be your reason. It has to be a specific reason. Then that motivates them to get up, to start their day, and to do a good job because they want to continue working from home. And then you look at their past history. If you're hiring someone fresh out of college, was this the person who was able to study in a disciplined fashion on their own? Is this somebody who was in clubs? Is this somebody who showed a whole lot of proactivity in the other parts of their life? Because if they're doing that, and if their communication is really good through your interview process, then the chances are they're going to be a good remote worker.
You know, a lot of companies feel that people have to earn the right to work remotely, and then perhaps people early on in their career, like millennials, aren't the best candidates to work not in the office. What do you think? Does it matter?
I think that it depends on the company, really, and the person. So I would love to give a straight answer, yes, we should all work in an office first, but not necessarily. There is somebody out there who's the perfect fit for your job, and maybe they are just coming back from taking care of a sick relative or their own situation. But if they have that motivation, if they have that why, and if you as a manager or a small business are prepared to have that extra bandwidth to deal with the new setup, then yes, anybody can work remotely from the beginning.
So what tips do you have to small business owners to actually create a team? Because I think that we work best, face-to-face in a group, person to person. Mm-hmm. But how do you create that being together culture remotely? What tools should people be using, and what's some best practices?
Well, there are some great tools out there that are low or no cost. So if you want that feeling of the team together, you can do that on a video call. And there are different apps out there. I mean, Skype has been around forever. There are newer ones like Whereby or Zoom, where you can get people together, you can see each other on video, face-to-face, and have some of those connections. And getting together regularly is really one of the best ways to make sure that your team is all on the same page. So doing something like that, having some kind of an instant messaging system where you're talking to each other regularly is going to help you develop that skill and get people all together and pushing in the right direction.
So you mentioned a couple of things, getting all together. So you still feel it's important for people to see each other face to face at least sometime during the year?
Absolutely. Ideally, if you can get together physically, that's great. Many small businesses don't have that sort of money that they can set aside. But if you don't, you can make it work. For example, my company, we haven't been physically together in several years, but we do get together on video quite regularly. And I have colleagues I have never met in person, so I feel very closely attached to and in a very trusting relationship.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you use video, you really can feel like you're in the same room. And video also has a tendency to focus you on doing one thing instead of listening on the phone and doing something else.
Exactly. You just have to put it as part of a regular schedule. That's the main thing.
Let's talk about the instant messaging platforms like Slack, because that also can create the sense of people being in the same room. But how do you make sure that the culture, Teresa, that's created on this instant messaging is really one that reflects your company and we're just not complaining or bad-mouthing customers? Because I've seen that too.
It's a good point. So culture is something that's going to happen whether or not you plan for it.
Right.
And if you're going to have an instant messaging system, let's plan for how to use this thing. Let's tell our employees we're going to get on, we're going to talk every Monday about the things that we're doing for the week, or here's where you're going to reach out to somebody to talk through an issue. But if it's a complicated issue, get on the phone. Let's have a conversation where we hear each other's voices. So it doesn't take a lot of time to mindfully plan what something like Slack should be used for. And to tell people, hey, you need to give somebody a couple hours before they have to look at your message. So just plan that out ahead of time, let people know, and if you see people not using the system that way, talk to them about it.
So are you saying, Teresa, that instant messaging really isn't always instant?
Oh, no, and it's good that it isn't, because if you're across time zones and someone sends you a message and it's 6 a.m. your time, there shouldn't be an obligation that you are going to read that if you're not supposed to be in the office by, say, until 9 a.m. So having that pause is vital, or you're going to be interrupted every 3 seconds and not be working on what you should be doing.
So what are some of the other common misconceptions for managing remote staff?
Well, we touched on it a little bit, that people are slacking, and that is a big, big myth, because if you look at some of the reports, like Buffer had a survey of last year, and while managers are worried that people are slacking, there are a lot of people, 22%, who have trouble unplugging from their job. So if we're having this disconnect, employees say, I am working all the time, please help, and management says, are you working? That's a big disconnect.
It's interesting. It's interesting to me that one of the biggest instant message company calls their company Slack.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. We're not Slack. We're not a bunch of slackers.
Exactly. Go ahead, Teresa. What were you going to say?
I'd say another thing is that people who work remotely, there's this idea that you have to be sort of a hermit, somebody that doesn't like people. But really, if you're working remotely, you have to be even more of a people person, because you have to be the sort of person who reaches out to say, good morning, how was your day, to your colleague, that reaches out and says, hey, can we get together and talk through this work problem that we're dealing with? So really, you need to be very good with the people component if you're going to work remotely.
You know, it's interesting. One of my clients taught me that before you get to the business, if you're working remotely with someone, first you have to do a check-in. So, how are you doing? Spend that minute or two to find out how they're doing personally before you just jump right into business. It really does help.
It really helps. It makes people at ease, and they're more likely to give you honest answers when we're talking about the tough questions.
So, is remote staff or distributed staff really for every business that doesn't require people to be someplace physically? Obviously, it doesn't work in a retail store, right? I can't hire someone in Kansas if I got a store in Oklahoma. But can it work for everybody?
It can. Will it? That's the biggest question. So the technology is there. the big question that I have, that a business owner should be asking themselves, is do I have the appetite for this? Because it can give you such cost savings. It can open up a lot of possibility, but you have to have the courage, the space to evolve as management style and as a business owner to let people work outside the office.
And I think you have to set up the right metrics for people to be measured against, right? And it doesn't really matter where they are, as long as, it's this old concept of results-oriented work, right? Let's give people unlimited vacation as long as they get the work done.
Exactly. And let them start work when they want to, as long as they get the work done.
And Teresa, I agree with you. I think that people that work remotely actually work more. It's also shown that if you give someone unlimited vacation, they actually take less vacation.
They do, and that's something to keep in mind as a business owner. So if you're giving unlimited vacation, you can follow up and say, I take this many days off a year, and I expect that you're at least going to do that, or something along the line, so that people are actually utilizing the resource you're giving them.
It's interesting. Several years ago, I was on safari in South Africa, and there was a CEO of a very well-known Silicon Valley company, and he said, well, I can't go on the safari drive because I've got to do a call with my team. I want to set a good example. And I was thinking to myself, Teresa, if he was setting a good example, he would just say, listen, I'm on vacation. I'm on a safari drive. You can get along without me.
Exactly, because we're leading by example. Business owner is the cornerstone of the culture of the business.
The title of the book is called Working Remotely, Secrets to Success for Employees on Distributed Teams. Teresa Douglas, where can people get in touch with you?
You can reach me at teresamdouglas.com.
And remember, you went to Sarah Lawrence, so you got to be good, just like my son.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. I want to thank everybody for joining us this week radio show. I want to thank our sponsors, Nextiva, the all-in-one communications platform for your small business. I want to thank LinkedIn. It's the place to generate leads, drive traffic, and build your brand awareness. For a free $100 credit to launch your campaign, go to www.linkedin.com/SBR. I also want to thank Visita. All you need to run your business in one software. Try for free at www.vcita.com. That's VCITA.com. Use Barry10 for an exclusive discount. If also got to thank Blue Summit Supplies. Get your W-2s, your 1099 tax forms, and all your business supplies at www.bluesummitsupplies.com/SBR. Use code SBR10 to get 10% at checkout. Thank you to our incredible staff to produce this show, our booking producer, Sarah Schafferin, our in-studio producer, Lady B, our marketing manager, Courtney Gilchrist. If you're serious about being more successful, you got to give me a call. I've set up a private line just for you, 773-837-8250, or email me at barry@moltz.com. Remember, love everyone, trust a few, and paddle your own canoe. Have a profitable and passionate week.
You can find Barry Moltz on the web at barrymoltz.com, or more episodes of Small Business Radio at smallbizradioshow.com.